Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Industry Podcast, an Esports Insider podcast focused on the people and personalities in and around the esports industry. I'm your host, Kerry Wananen, joined today by the one and only Adam Fitch, head of content for the esports and gaming job board, Hitmarker. How you doing, Adam?
I'm doing well, thank you, mate. It sounds good to be something that's like an authority, you know? Hopefully I can live up to that and represent them well.
Well, honestly, I don't think anyone could dispute that if you are looking for a job in esports and gaming, that you are not going to stumble upon Hitmarker. And also, if you are looking for information and content around the industry, you're also going to stumble upon Hitmarker because you've been doing a great job keeping up with industry news.
Thank you, man. I mean, it's tough as well because now my scope is more into gaming as well, and I've been very ignorant of gaming as long as I've been in esports. So I'm kind of learning on the job while doing the old trusty bits and bobs that work, you know, the financials for esports companies and stuff. It's been interesting, I can say that much.
Yeah, what's like the biggest difficulty that you found in terms of writing about gaming that's different than writing about esports?
Well, it's much bigger, right? So like the fact is there are companies that make moves, and I don't necessarily know how that affects the industry as a whole because I haven't paid attention to it. Sorry, so I don't necessarily have the intuition of how certain moves affects things. Whereas in esports, if a company does something, I just kind of got that feeling. I'm like, okay, this relates to that, and wait, they were partnered with this company, so why are they partnered with this company? It's the same category. Like, it's just my lack of, I guess, knowledge from over the years just really means it's hard for me to kind of get anything from it on a personal basis. Like, I understand the story per se, like on a very insular level, but I don't understand it on a wider perspective, wider lens for the industry. But I'm getting there slowly.
Yeah, and you've built your esports industry knowledge from before. You were the editor at Esports Insider for a bit over a year and a half.
I think so. I think something along those lines. But yeah, the whole pandemic thing has kind of messed up my timelines. I'll be completely honest with you. But I think it was just over a year or so. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. The same. Time has gone very wobbly. When I try to think back about things 2 years ago and really think that was 2 years ago. Wow, incredible. And then after Esports Insider, you moved over to Deserto as their esports biz lead there, right? And now you are sort of in the same beat in a way, as you just said, you expanded it into gaming, but doing that with Hitmarker. And you've spoken before about basically being very happy to leave the publication side of covering the industry. And so what would you say is the biggest difference working for, I mean, like Hitmarker doesn't necessarily have skin in the game in the same of a publication covering the industry. So what would you say is the biggest difference for you?
I'd say that the motives of Hitmarker versus a publication, whether the publications like it or not, they are in it for views. That is their currency. Whereas Hitmarker, obviously, like they have business models outside of that. Like they were doing fine before starting a content vertical. So this to them is just, you could probably say marketing in one aspect, but also it's a means of educating like the people who use the website. So people looking to get into the industry or people looking to make a move within the industry that they're already in. So one, I'd say, is to try and make money off of consumers. The other one is trying to educate them, if I'm being like entirely cynical.
Yeah, but I mean, because you're still so quick to the punch in getting stories and sort of still having your sources and inside scooped, I'm sure Hitmarker's still ranking pretty high if you can break a story soon. So I think in that sense, like content marketing, bringing people to the website, obviously, I mean, I don't know what Hitmarker's like advertising. If you guys do advertising revenue based on views, that's how publications work. But you're just getting more people to the site to hopefully, you know, land their dream job, correct?
Yeah, we have no ads on content, I will say. So our user experience when it comes to reading stories in esports, I believe is the best. Like that's down to the format of the stories and the reporting as well. But yeah, we're completely ad free on that front. Like people can see blatantly that we're not trying to make money straight off of views on articles.
And so what's like, I mean, as head of content, what's sort of the content strategy with your job? You know, before you were really covering things as news, right? Trying to be as objective as possible and really, you know, reporting the facts, bringing it all here. I mean, you've been experimenting a bit with like very like bullet points of this is what you need to know, not necessarily building a narrative around anything, but making it very, very digestible. And now you guys have started doing a bit more video content, I've noticed, which is really great. You've had some great guests on the pod already. So what's your thought there in terms of maybe doing something you've never done before? I mean, you used to host the Esports Insider podcast, so I'm a spiritual successor in that sense. And then I don't think you did any podcasts with Deserto, no. So now you're really in the driver's seat here. Tell me how that's going.
Well, I'd say like the strategy behind it is to keep people coming back, and with that is great, like great writing, hopefully. Well, I would say like people know to come to us if you want a very clear breakdown of what's gone on with very little bias. Like there's no opinion injected in any of these, though I think there'll be some more opinion-led content coming out pretty soon. That's something I plan to do because that's a lot of my value in this industry, in my opinions, unfortunately. I'm trying to live a quieter life now, but I'm gonna have to get back into that pretty soon, and maybe not just tweeting as much, but I can put that in articles instead. A better use of it. But yeah, it's a mad one, you know, because I'm not used to being like a content creator. I think is almost how I see it now. And of course, like head of content, when you're the only one realistically in the content department, just means you are sole content person. It sounds probably more grand than what it is, you know. But yeah, I'm trying to get myself out of my comfort zone entirely. I'm trying to like become like a really solid talking head. That is something I'm probably the most bullish on right now. Like I think my writing's at a decent point. I would like to get better again at long form writing. I've kind of been off of that for quite a while now, I would say. Several reasons for that, but I'm not too confident in my written ability on long form, though every time I put out a feature, a lot of people message me and say it's good. So I'm like, okay, I've still got that, but I'm not feeling it within, you know? So realistically, I want people to keep coming back. That's the first thing, and they're doing that for the right reasons. And if that works out, then we get a lot of people recurring visiting to our website, which is a goal of ours. Realistically, you want people to come back to Hitmarker all the time instead of just fleeting visits, right? So while that's not necessarily a metric that we record, like a lot of it is leading based on that. And I'd say like the core ethos realistically is to keep people in the loop and educate them, as opposed to no shade to any company, but like getting the PR and just like rejigging it and then banging it straight out again. There's companies and websites that do that. So there's no need for me to do the same thing. So that's why articles are shorter, for example, like for sure. It maybe omits some of the not necessary but nice details to have occasionally, just to get right to the point. And that's a decision I have to make on the fly with each one. I'm like, is that really necessary, or is that just something I'm used to banging in normally, you know? So I'm just trying to rethink what is important information. And something I feel like I've probably missed is obviously on the gaming stuff, but even esports occasionally, like looking at the wider story and really contextualizing some of what's gone on. I think I could do a better job there and really give people a rounder knowledge of what's what when it comes to esports and gaming. So that's something I'm looking ahead at as well. And on the video front, at the moment, I wouldn't say there's like real hard metrics on those. Of course, we've got goals, but like there's no pressure from the people above me whatsoever. They're just letting me do my thing, and I'm kind of experimenting out in public and figuring out what works, what doesn't. Obviously, the goal again is education, so I've been doing very like niche, very specific videos so far, like interviewing commentators and people working in marketing and stuff, right? Which look like that's not going to get a shit ton of views as they are. I know that, I'm aware of that, but over time they could be little, you know, like gold mines of evergreen content, really niche specific stuff. It's useful more than it is clickbaity or really attention grabbing. It's going to matter a lot and be really helpful to a small amount of people. I'm completely fine with that. I think casting the net as wide as possible early on probably isn't the best bet for me. I'd rather start small than build bigger as I kind of work things out in this new kind of role, I suppose, because I'm very used to the like the story is the story, that's that, and then I move on to the next story. Whereas now I'm having to look above it all, and I'm like, okay, we've got this newsletter. What does that do? We've got these news reports. How do I navigate those, and what's the best format for those? Features, okay, what would people want to read feature-wise, and are we celebrating people as much as we're taking some down and holding them accountable? And videos, yeah, like what's the strategy there? So trying to stay on top of all of that and juggle it all is new to me. The video stuff is the most interesting for me on a personal level, but I still think the writing for Hitmarker at the moment is the most valuable for other people.
I mean, when you're working at Dexerto, I think your columns were always a big hit and would always really drive a lot of conversation too. When you would post something on Friday, there would always be, I mean, not that it matters so much, but like a lot of engagement because people would also offer their opinion or say, hey, this was interesting. This was, different. I agree, I disagree or whatever, and not necessarily, just to make numbers go to the moon or anything, but it was good conversation starter for the industry. And you just mentioned that you've been doing less long form stuff. I can imagine that that's probably a time constraint thing as well, because you are, as you were saying, you're doing video, you're doing a newsletter, you're doing all these news reports, features as well. So how do you find being this sort of one-man show in terms of content creation for Hitmarker? How do you find that balance?
Yeah, well, it's all a case of prioritization, right? Which obviously means that I have to assign values, an actual value to everything that I'm doing, which look like it could be misguided. That's the scary part. Like I feel like I'm on top of what I think serves us best and the bits that require the most time, but I could be wrong and we'll work that out over time. But yeah, it's time constraint-ish on the long form pieces, but also just genuinely on like a personal level. I don't really care to have a say on everything anymore. In fact, I quite like having a say on nothing and just watching the madness unfold. There's something nice about it because, yeah, my features and my columns at Dexerto were among the most read stuff that I did, unless there was occasional like scoop that popped off or something. But I look back and I feel part of me, there was a small part of me that would try and think of the most edgelord title, and then I would have to try and justify it and see if I can build an argument for it within the text. And that's not how I operated, but I'll look back and I think like maybe there was a little bit of that because I knew if I did a piece called Esports Fans Don't Exist, then that's a madness because everyone's like, what the fuck are you on about, Adam? And they have to go and check that out, right? And now I truly believe that. So, I mean, it's an example of one I stand by and I can kind of argue it, I feel, pretty bloody well, in fact. There's not really anyone that's come back and rebutted it to a point where I'm like, I'm wrong. But yeah, I wanted to get away from that, So just trying to stop the urge of, I have to get into this drama, I have to speak on this right now. And then I can choose wisely which things I think really require like a voice of sanity from my perspective. Or maybe things that aren't quite getting picked up as much that I think are important. So I've stripped myself back, personal and professional reasons, I suppose, and now just slowly I'll start introducing myself back in the same kind of, like bold and brash approach as always, which I've kind of been known for over the years. And we'll see how that goes. Just trying to do things for the right reasons, and balancing it all has been mad. And I haven't got the hang of it. One thing I've realized is when I try and balance life and work, balance implies like it's an ongoing struggle. It's an ongoing thing. I'm never going to reach a point of nirvana where I'm like, okay, I have this all sorted out. So I imagine some work weeks will be mental on the video front because someone may cancel last minute and I need to try and find a new guest. Some, weeks where, there could be a new acquisition from Savvy Gaming Group. And then I need to write 2 opinion pieces on why Saudi in esports is awful and then write the news piece and then blah, 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 blah. It's just about like staying on my toes as much as possible and prioritizing the whole way through whatever I assign most value to, which is, again, I could be wrong, but I'm doing it with the best intentions and being honest with myself. So I think it's going okay so far.
Yeah, and speaking about balance, we're friends on Goodreads, and you've been putting in some pages there. Um, how do you find balance with, and where do you find it in learning more about the gaming side of things? Where do you look to learn more about gaming?
If I'm honest, I wish I could give like three really good sources on that and say that I have a regime that every single day I go and read X and Y, but I don't. It's just whenever things pop up. Like I think is it gamesindustry.biz? I think that's the domain, the URL. They're pretty solid, I'd say. Just for even headline reading occasionally, or if I want to get a bit of a better understanding as to the wider effect of it. But Axios, while they're a mainstream publication, realistically, right? But they have, I don't know, at least a couple of full-time gaming staff on the publication and writing side, and they're bloody good. And they're the inspiration for the format that I've stolen, effectively. So I definitely quote them. But yeah, while I make sure I read every night before I go to bed, I don't have any sort of strict thing in place for gaming news. It's just if stuff pops up on the timeline, or if I get 5 minutes, or if I'm looking for feature inspiration, something along those lines, I'll go hunting. But it's just as and when there's a bit of downtime, really.
Do you have like internal channels in Hitmarker where people are sharing articles and saying, "Hey, check this one out," or "This one's important," or "Did you catch this? This was nuts."
Little bits. There's a content channel where so that's basically my channel. Anything concerning me, people can bang it in there. It happens. I wish it happened more, and I have asked for it to happen more. But look, it's a small team with big ambitions, a lot of responsibilities. So I don't think it's top of mind for them to like walk me through a story. You know, occasionally they'll share things, but it's maybe not as much as I'd like on a selfish basis. But I understand that they're probably more flat out than I am, in fact. You know, so hopefully that's something we can get to a bit more over time as well, because I'm one person and the esports industry, there's a lot going on. Never mind adding gaming on top of that, which is obviously a much, much bigger industry, you know. I could do with all the eyes I can get on that front. So we've got one, but it could be improved for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, so Hitmarker started, from my understanding, purely esports jobs, and then expanded into gaming. I think 2020, somewhere around then, maybe 2021, and then recently has expanded into sports jobs as well, which is curious and makes a lot of sense. But it's very different. Sports, I think esports, obviously, and gaming share a little bit more together than either one of those share a bit more with sports. So I don't know if you were involved in any of those decision making processes, but I'm curious to how you have experienced that working with this company that has expanded, as almost all esports companies do, expand outside of esports. What does that look like for you?
That is a very good point you make, where this seems inevitable with any esports company. They start and they go, we're going to go hard in this niche, and as it grows, this is going to be the thing. Like, we're early. And then it's like, oh, wow, it's not grown as much as we all expected. Okay, let's pivot a little bit and broaden, and we'll include some more casual gaming stuff in there. You see it from media publications all the way to esports organizations that get streamers involved, right? So that seems like a natural progression anyway. I think maybe Rich, the MD, and I think co-founder of Hitmarker, I don't know if Phil, his brother, founded it all by himself, but the MD, I think at the time he basically said publicly that there's maybe not enough going on in esports for Hitmarker to justify itself. And it has the best service in esports, so I think it makes sense if it was confident it could take that to gaming, which is obviously a much bigger market, and absolutely nail that, then it's a useful service for people, so why not give it to them? When it comes to sports, I assume it's the same mentality again. Well, obviously, it would be nice for Hitmarker as an entire entity, as a legal entity, to be bigger, and of course, like, expanding scope will be presumably a big part of that if it goes well on rebound. I don't know for sure what the thinking is. I assume it's just, look, we've got the best product. Again, we could literally replicate this in every market, and it could do well if it gets the eyeballs on it. I believe they probably have that level of confidence because they've spent years now really laser focused on providing the best experience on that front. And there's a new version of the website coming out, which you can see already on the Rebound website and on the Brazilian version of Hitmarker, which will be coming to the main version of Hitmarker soon, which even improves upon it even more. So there's a luxury in being entirely dedicated to that, right? And I think taking it to new markets that you have an understanding of makes a lot of sense. Rich used to work in sports, so I think he's very sound on his knowledge on that front. He actually used to work for my hometown football club, and I support his hometown football club. That's how, like, when we first met, that's how we connected. But yeah, he has the traditional sports background anyway. So, and he's obviously been the lead on that, being the managing director anyway. So I think it makes a lot of sense to him. I haven't spoken about Rebound much to him, so I can't tell you for sure what's what, but that's how I see it, at least. A natural expansion, having the best product, it makes sense to bang it everywhere if you can.
Yeah, I feel like esports has this sort of recursive tendency that either people start somewhere else, come into esports, pick up some interesting like processes or ways of doing things. I guess that's the exact same thing as process, but and then they take that back to where they came, or they start in esports, they go somewhere else, and then takes that learning from elsewhere. Like, let me finish my thought. They take that from elsewhere, and then they come back into esports. For example, like Skylar Johnson started out in esports, then he left the industry to go into marketing, really get marketing down, traditional marketing, and then came back into esports to start Paper Crowns. So, and Rich is a very similar story, but the other way around, coming from sports, going into esports, and then say, actually, we can eat some people's lunch back where I came from, and brings that back. What do you think it is, if you had to guess, of what gives this like boomerang experience in the forged by fire aspect of esports?
It's an interesting one. Part of me thinks it's maybe sunken cost a little bit. If you put a lot of time into esports, and it's very easy to make a decent name for yourself, especially if you like leading in what you do, right? So that helps, and that alone can win you a lot of clients. Like the past two jobs I've had, I haven't like seeked; they came to me. For example, I'm a small name, but like I've seen the effects of that decently as well. So I imagine on a bigger basis, like Skylar, very popular guy, around since like Call of Duty 4, maybe earlier, competing, co-founded Envy back in the day. So already a bit of something around his name. Worked his way up, leaves, comes back. Everyone already knows him, but now he's armed with a lot of knowledge and his own business ready to go. Like, he already has the contacts and the kind of buzz around him and the reputation. Come back with the skills, and it's a madness. I think maybe sunken cost a little bit, where it's like, oh, I've put a lot of time in here, I'd rather make it work here. I've got friends here, because esports started as a pastime, a hobby, and a community for a lot of people. So if you can combine that with what you do professionally, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I'd also say, like, esports is an industry, like there are hundreds of other industries, so maybe it's just a case of it happenstance. I bet there's people who bounce between industries and other industries all the time. I get quite insular in my thinking sometimes, and think like what happens in esports is unique to esports always, and it's the only annoying industry where people aren't making money and people get fucked over. Obviously not the case. So maybe a bit of both. Maybe it's just something that happens, and then maybe there's also people who also maybe have a bit of Stockholm syndrome, where they're like, oh man, I miss it. It's awful, but it's my awful thing. I need to get back to that. So they leave and then go, yeah, it's time. I've got a bit more experience and more knowledge under my belt. I can make something of myself even more now, if you combine a big name and the skills.
Well, let's talk about you in that aspect. We speak pretty often, but one of the conversations that we had, you were talking about how, working in the industry, you sort of lost your love for gaming, and you used to watch esports, you used to care about it, and then covering it the whole time, you're like, I don't want this to take up any more of my time. You got rid of your Xbox. Last time we spoke, you had a new Xbox to play some Halo, if I remember. A, what's the status on that Xbox? Are you still playing? And B, um, do you think in the near future that you're gonna throw that boomerang?
About once every week or so. But there's a new update that's come out, a new patch and a new season battle pass thing. So maybe like 2-3 times a week at the moment. I'm back to it a little bit, but like my gaming sessions in terms of length are pitiful now. It's like 2 hours and I'm done. Like I can't just sit at the desk and just hammer it anymore. I can't like stay up till 3 a.m. sweating it out, eating pizza. I wish I could because I miss those days, but I just don't have that anymore, you know? And you're asking when am I going to leave esports? Then realize I actually need it and come back.
Yeah, sort of. I just remember that you made a public statement one time saying, and maybe this is a self-fulfilling prophecy, that you said, before I leave esports, I want a job in content. And I think maybe that was in reference to an org that you were talking about, that you wanted to work on an org status with content. Now you're in content. Well, you've always been in content, to be honest. But
I know what you're saying.
What's your thoughts on? Just saying I'm late. I'm out of here, guys.
I don't think I've said this public. Also, I like how you called like a tweet a public statement. It makes me sound very professional versus just a madman tweeting while he's on the toilet or something, you know, having a rant. I love that. But when I was at Deserto, I was thinking a lot about where the hell I could go outside of esports, and I put all of my chips in. So options were maybe like Subway as a sandwich artist, or I don't know, go on LinkedIn and just see who my connections are if anyone wants me. You know, I don't know how appealing esports experience is outside of esports. I don't know. I think it takes a special kind of self-loathing person to stay in esports that long, especially in journalism, like the most thankless of jobs in esports, you know. So yeah, I was trying to like identify places I could maybe go because I just felt like, yeah, this isn't it anymore for me. It's not. If I'm not happy doing it, then I'm not going to produce good work anyway, you know. But then I got hit up by the boys at Hitmarker, and they were almost my first employer in esports back when we both first started. So that made a lot of sense. I said, you know what, I'll give that a shot, and thankfully it's working out so far. And yes, when I said I'm working in content, I think it was in relation to an organization, but that's before I came to my conclusion that effectively every esports organization that's around right now, I don't think any, if not maybe 2 or 3, I don't think many are going to be around in the long term as like the Man Uniteds or Barcelona's or whatever. Well, maybe not financially right now, Barcelona, but you know, like the big sports brands of the future, I don't think many that we have right now are going to remain in like 20 years time or whatever. So I don't know what necessary time scale I was on when I was tweeting that. Back then, it was probably a short-term thing. But yeah, that was before I realized like organizations are the worst place to go if money-wise in esports, especially like investing and also time-wise. I'd personally say as well. I think there's fun to be had on the sidelines and on the periphery of esports.
What I think is super interesting about esports is just how quickly it refreshes, right? I mean, we have sort of Overwatch 2-ish right now. Is that going to replace the Overwatch League? Is the Overwatch League going to just be over, if it lasts so long, Overwatch 3, Overwatch 4, or is that going to be something completely new? I mean, League updates all the time, and so you have to update your meta knowledge and what's how League works in this season versus the next. So in a way, it's not built to be sustainable for orgs or rosters in this way. So I think, speaking to your point, that just the way that it is built, it is not going to be allowed for orgs, I think, to really stick around for the long haul, as you're saying. And I think a lot of this rapid refresh leads to burnout, just on all sides. How fast things move and change, how fast people get tired of it. So I know that you have experienced, I think all of us, everyone in esports has experienced a bit of overwork. How are you dealing with that now with your new job?
Yeah, I was the king of esports burnout at one point. I don't know how I kept going. Like my tires were all the way burnt out. I was screeching and I was still going, and somehow kept it afloat. But now my life to work balance is impeccable right now, though anything could like throw a spanner in there at any moment, of course. But like, I'm on a good routine. I'm maybe not as available as I would like to be work wise. Like in the evenings, if a big story drops, then all of my instincts go to turn your computer on right now, sit down at your desk, you're pumping this out, let's go, big tweet about it. And then I remind myself, like, do you want to remain interested in this stuff and like feeling alive and excited? Like that can wait till tomorrow. If I offer a unique spin on it, then it's still a worthy story for us to cover, you know? So all my instincts tell me to overwork, but like my sensible brain and my kind of ongoing self-care brain, because a lot of people only turn to self-care towards the end of a cycle where they're like feeling awful and have overworked. And I think, why don't we just look after ourselves all along the way? And maybe it'll be a little less harsh, you know, when you get to that inevitable point of I need a break, you know. So doing very well, managing to read and get out walking every day, you know, a lot of guilt when it comes to that because I could be working more, but I understand if I want to keep putting in the best work during my allotted hours that I get paid for, then I should take time away from it. And instead of 16 hours a day, which is how I started off, 16 hours a day every day, by the way, when I was freelancing at the beginning, I can produce better work in in 5 hours now, you know, the same amount of work and better than what I could back then because I was multitasking, which just meant I was getting nothing done, really. Learned a lot along the way, and I haven't felt burnt out since starting this job, nowhere near. So doing very well, thank you.
That's great to hear. I mean, I think of a difficult aspect of working in esports, especially on like the media side or covering esports news in Europe, is when America wakes up, and that is right around the time that we're all closing our computers. So a lot of big news does come around this time that you were just mentioning. It's in the evening, you're sat on the couch. You give in to the urge and you take a scroll through Twitter and you see something, you're like, yeah, I've wrestled with this feeling also. I've given in quite a few times of, sorry guys, this is a big news. I have to cover this. And yeah, I mean, it pays off in internet points, I guess, but it also means that you're working extra hours when your employer's not paying you to do it.
It's like Clark Kent, if he hears like a crown going off in the distance, he just has to rip and go fly to it. And it's like, mate, just take a break, man. Like, I used to feel like that. I'd be like, no, the people need me, man. This is my job. This is what I'm relied upon. So I'd always feel like, yeah, I'm a hero rushing to this shit. But yes, that is a good way of making an evening go way too quick and then go, no, wait, have I even taken any time to decompress today? Probably not. Like, the urge is a mad one, isn't it? It really is on like a news front. And also, like, if you're not first to it, then you feel like you're last. But I think that's only the case if you're doing the same stuff as everyone else. I was king of journalism for like 2.5 years. I've just called myself a king like twice in very close succession, but I firmly believe those things. King of burnout, king of esports journalism.
I think they're correlated.
Yes. Oh, definitely so, mate. Yeah, that's a good point.
Speaking about journalism and churnalism, and I mean, pieces that you've talked about quite a lot of just like the state of esports journalism, and I don't want to beat a dead horse and have that be the only thing that you ever talk about when you're on a pod, because you've been on many and I've listened to probably all of them. But now that you've been away for a few months from the journalism game, let's talk a little bit about the state of it. I mean, a lot of people have walked away, or not necessarily walked away, but are no longer active participants, or people end up doing their own thing. I'm talking Richard Lewis. He's king of content, that guy. You know, of course he works for Dexerto, but he's putting out insane amounts of content, and he's sort of independent, I would say. Well, not more than sort of independent. He's independent, but he has sponsors, and he's doing his own thing. He's a content creator in that sense, right? With a massive audience, people tune in, people want to hear what he has to say. I would say similarly to Jacob Wolf, going a similar path of being a sort of self-sustained journalist, no longer being associated with a publication, doing his own thing with Overcome. And then a bunch of journalists just saying, "Hey, I'm moving on to something different that pays the bills better," or "Yeah, I have a better opportunity elsewhere." But with people leaving, and I personally feel that there's a lack of development in the skill of writing in esports. That new people are not not that they're not developing fast enough, but like that when old guards leave, their absence is felt. I feel quite a lot. But I would love to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, if Richard Lewis sticks to his word in which this is his last year, he wants to get the esports award for a third time and then bounce. If that's the case, then esports is one of the biggest losses we could have. Even if he sticks around and does content, if he's no longer doing journalistic work, then I can't think of many, if any, people that if they leave, at least in Western esports, that'll make a bigger dent. Maybe Faker in terms of fandom and stuff, but in terms of the actual health of the industry, it's a lot of responsibility on one man. And selfishly, I want him to stay and keep pumping out good stuff. But look, like I think it's not a secret that he's maybe become a bit jaded over the years. He'd probably say that himself. Like, there's only so much shit you can put up with, right? And as we call it esports an industry, but realistically, it's a network and of many different communities, each with their own setups and quirks and fan bases and issues. Like that's a lot to stay on top of, and I bet he wishes he could have done a lot more over time, right? So yeah, like if when he goes at the end of this year, as he says, like that's dire for us, and yeah, I don't know who steps in at that point. I don't know. There's some big boots to fill overall, right? I make a point of giving him his flowers while he's still about and doing it, as opposed to when he's gone. And then we realise, there's a big Richard Lewis shaped hole here in esports journalism. Like, yes, we know that's going to be the case, Yeah, Jacob going to Substack. I think if I was to put money back in the day on who would be the first to do it, it would be him. It makes a lot of sense. I think he's quite a safe person as well. Like, he isn't just going to lash out and call people mentally ill on Twitter. He seems like quite a calculated person, and he's popular, and he's got the resume to back it up with ESPN and Dot and everything, right? So that makes a lot of sense. I was thinking as you were setting this question up about all of the ESI folk that have moved on from like my era of ESI. Like I've bounced, like Mitch Reams is now working for Riot Games. HB Duran's working for Dr. Disrespect. Billy Studholme, he's like consulting now, and I was speaking to him the other day. He doesn't consider himself a journalist. Like yourself, like obviously you're still working for ESI here, but you're doing stuff at Meta now. Like there's a lot of people, and I think there's probably a couple more that I'm missing as well. Like it's A Hayward as well, and Andrew Hayward. He's still in journalism, but gone to the crypto kind of Web3 side. Like we've lost a lot of people, even just on the industry front, and that is of course going to leave a big gap, and I don't know how we fill it. I don't know. I've been thinking about it a lot, like how do we encourage new people and help develop them? I think they have to show willingness and emerge as they are, and then maybe they can be nudged in that right direction by the likes of Rich and stuff, if he's willing to do what he's done before with like Josh Raven and Jacob Wolf, for example, But yeah, I'm hopeful some people will pop up. I think on like the CSGO scene, they have some really good reporters there. I wish they would expand, and maybe they will in the future and cover more industry stuff. Like that scene seems to have a lot of good journalists. So yeah, maybe the key is to poach them and tell them, look, mate, esports is bigger than just CSGO. Like, let's get this popping. If you want to do bigger stories, let's go. I don't know, man. But overall, I don't know. I don't want to shit on journalism too much. I know people are trying their best, but I don't think it's too great in esports. Still, my opinion hasn't changed over the past few months.
Yeah, and I also think, speaking to what you were saying, especially on like the industry coverage side, right? Like attracting people to cover the industry is more difficult and a more difficult job than just match recaps, or just like, let's just say like normal esports journalism or coverage, which is just covering what happens in esports or drama or et cetera, et cetera. But focusing on the businesses and learning about the businesses and who's doing what, who owns what, who partnered with who, all of that whole aspect that really has nothing to do with who's playing or winning the games. That's maybe not so sexy to the young journalists fresh out of uni that want to get a job in esports. Yeah, it's hard. I think it's definitely a hard one to crack. I'm with you 100% there.
But like the thing is though, like a lot of these journalists who do the more competitive side of coverage, if you want to call it that, they know the intricacies of those things within their given scenes. But I don't know if it's because it's just anything related to the game they find interesting, or if they have actually caught the like industry bug, but are yet to realize it on a larger scale because they're very insular and one-track minded. You never know. Maybe it would work on a wider scale, but it's the game they love, they grew up on, and still play casually and everything, and that's where they made the name. Maybe so, but as you say, yeah, there's a lot more groundwork that needs to be done if you're gonna write about the industry stuff. Like at the beginning of when I started in esports journalism, I was working freelance for a site that owns Virtus Pro. I didn't realize at the time, which is obviously tied to a Russian oligarch, which has been sanctioned by the EU or UK or whatever, and now all the stuff that's going on at VP. I, as a journalist, was literally being paid by indirectly by a Russian oligarch and working for a company that owns a team. Like, that is inherently fucked, but I had no idea, even as like a predominantly business journalist at that point, because I was very young and stupid and getting to grips with it all. There's a lot to get to grips with. I didn't even realize, man. And I thought about it the other day and I was like, wow, that is mad dodgy, and that's a massive conflict of interest. I don't know, me now would be calling out me back then very aggressively on Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, like that's the thing about the past. You can't change it. You can only learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
But this is also a thing that I think is a way that potentially, and this will be my last question, a way that potentially Hitmarker can contribute. I mean, Hitmarker's been doing lots of educational content, as you were talking about, and that's sort of the point of the pods and the videos, of interviewing interesting people about their jobs in the industry to help people that are looking to come into the industry, to learn more about what this means. It's also the point of this podcast, is to explain more about what people do in the industry outside of playing games or streaming. So what do you think, if anything, that you would like to contribute to people wanting to get into potentially esports industry journalism?
I don't think I'm a good role model. I don't know if I would say yes to an opportunity where I could help directly train or help educate or mentor young journalists looking to do it. I don't know if I'm the best person for that, like on a genuine basis. Part of me thinks like, come on, man, you've done this, like you're there, like sure. And part of what you do is pass it on to the next generation, I suppose, right? Even though I've only been going like 4 years, so I still feel, I don't know, relatively new. I don't think I'm the best kind of person for that. So I don't know where I would fit into helping the young generation, the next generation, if I'm completely honest. Mainly because I'm really jaded. I genuinely dislike 99% of the industry on like a real level. I really do. But that's just a me thing. I just can't reprogram myself to unsee some of the things that I see and believe what I do believe. So I wouldn't want to pass that on. I can't. They should be approaching things with enthusiasm and doing it for the love of the industry and stuff, in my opinion. That's a much better field than doing it for hatred towards the industry. And then on an actual journalism, technical, skillful, ability, knowledge level, there are people much better than me who have gone through formal education. I've just kind of winged my way through this entire thing, being completely honest. Like, I haven't really messed up in many places. I can't really think of any massive missteps I've had or made, but still, I don't know if I'd be the best person to like pass on some knowledge on that front. So I would support from the sidelines and answer questions if needed, but I don't know if I would play like a real close like part to that, I guess I'll just keep putting out the educational content on Hitmarker for now. When people reach out, I try and help. You know, I feel like I'd actually probably help better from further away than than I would being close. You know, so maybe through content that I produce, people can get stuff from that, and from watching podcasts like this, they can like look at what I say and think like, yeah, I agree with them on that, but not on that, and then form their own opinions and stances and stuff. I think that's maybe the best thing, to be honest, because I'm definitely not a role model or real person of authority, I feel.
Surprisingly enough, I would say that you were a role model for me, because when I first wanted to get into, like, I decided that I wanted to get into esports journalism for whatever reason I decided. And I opened up Twitter one day and I just typed in esports journalism or esports journalist or whatever. And maybe it's because your first name starts with an A. You popped up at the top and you were the first person that I followed. And then that was like a year before I decided to take my first shot working in the industry. So you were sort of a big contributor to my feed of what I understood about esports. And to be frank, at the beginning, I thought it was boring because you were covering the industry about things and not what I sort of thought esports was, right? So I was like, I don't really care about what businesses are doing or whatever. But with rapid exposure and constant exposure, then I saw, okay, this is actually pretty interesting. Oh, like seeing that this company paired up with this company at some point, but also did this at some point, and starting to see the red thread between things actually fueled my interest in that aspect a little bit more. And then as I started freelancing for Esports Insider, we had the opportunity to work a little bit together. And then you had the opportunity at Exerto. So then our like ships in the night, our paths crossed yet again. But it all comes full circle. Everything comes full circle for me, Adam. Now I got you on the pod. It's been a great time chatting with you. And also, I would say, even though you weren't trying to be the hero that esports wants, you, I think, in a lot of ways, are the hero that esports needs, to use another superhero
well, thank you,
metaphor.
We will
also,
kindly disagree on that, by the way.
Also, I was imagining when you were talking about like ripping open your shirt with the Superman logo, that it was a variation of the Atlanta Phase Adam Fitch.
Oh God,
that's just what popped in my head, man. I gotta be honest there.
I tell you what, though, with the AF stuff, at one point I was thinking of starting something where it was AF, so Adam Fitch was fuck, but like a play on the Atlanta Phase thing somewhere. Maybe that'll be a future podcast or something, But so I think we're probably the only two to put together AF, Atlanta Phase, and Adam Fitch. Two things that are very bad for the industry.
Depends on the way that you look at it, I guess. But Adam, thank you so much. Can you tell everyone where they can find you?
They can find me on
the internet.
Oh, God, I was going to tell you my address and everything there. No. So buy Adam Fitch everywhere. But more importantly, I'd say go follow Hitmarker, and you'll see my work through there. My work is infinitely more interesting than my tweets at this point. And I think that's about it. Oh, go to my YouTube channel, actually. I've got some decent little content on there, I'd say. Working with Billy Studholme, former features editor for Esports Insider, on that. So that's all I'd like to plug.
What's the name? It's
Cyber Athletics. I should say that. Yeah, Cyber Athletics. Like that. I'm trying to usher esports into a new era. I think it needs to build back better, to steal from a particular figure with that phrase. And Cyber Athletics is our way of doing so.
Nice. Love it. I've watched every episode. It's great. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you very much, man. Appreciate you.
Of course. Thanks for coming on the show, and I'll talk to you soon.